Howdy again everyone, and the Sirui company have just launched a new low-budget, full-frame, autofocus 85mm f1.4 lens called the Aurora. Well, let's take a look. It's available for Sony E, Nikon Z and Fuji X mirrorless cameras, and of course a Fuji camera will crop its image to the full-frame equivalent of 128mm. That makes it a fantastic option for portrait work or other subject photography where you want a deeply out of focus background, not to mention a faster shutter speeds that f1.4 can offer. The lens's price will be $599 but if you order it before December the 31st this year, it's only $499 and comes with a free UV and black mist filter. That's potentially a real bargain for early bird customers, well, if the lens is any good, that is. I want to thank Sirui for sending me one of these for testing, although as usual this is an independent review and they've had no input into the video at all. Despite having quite a tough body with lots of metal in its construction, the lens itself weighs only 540 grams, over 100 grams lighter than any of its 85mm f1.4 competitors, and it's fairly compact too for an f1.4 model. Sirui claim that the lens is dust-proof and even waterproof. I think by that they mean to say weather-sealed. In the US and in the UK the term waterproof tends to mean you could literally submerge the thing underwater for periods of time, which I absolutely wouldn't try to do with this thing. But there definitely are signs of good weather sealing here, including a gasket around the metallic rear mount. The front glass element even has a fluorine coating to help repel water and oils. There's also a USB-C port in the rear mount for future firmware updates. Talking about firmware, according to Sirui, with the firmware at launch, the lens is not fully compatible with a number of Sony cameras, so do check that out before buying one. Thankfully, it seemed to work perfectly fine with my Sony a7R III, and I could get test pictures off of my old a5100 aps-c camera too. The lens has quite a few controls on its body as well, especially for such a low budget option. At the rear we get an aperture control ring, which can be set either to click at every third of an f-stop or turn smoothly for video work. Something I would like to have seen though is a bit of a firmer click to get it in or out of automatic mode. On the side we get an auto manual focus switch as well as an autofocus lock button, handy. Then comes the metallic manual focus ring. You'll be able to see two things here. Firstly, I need to clean my camera's sensor, which I duly did before testing anything else, and secondly, the lens exhibits the normal kind of focus breathing that you would expect to see on an 85mm model. The lens's autofocus motor runs with only a barely audible whirring sound, and it worked accurately for me, but it's a little on a slow side. As you can see, it takes a moment to get up to speed, so we're probably dealing with quite a low torque motor here. It works slightly more confidently in autofocus continuous mode on a Sony camera. It's fully compatible with Sony's face and eye tracking options as well as their in-body image stabilization. The lens does not feature its own optical image stabilization though. The lens comes with a decently sized plastic hood with rubber trimming on the bottom, as well as quite a nice padded carry case, and as I mentioned, if you order it in 2024, you will get a UV and a black mist filter for free. The lens has a 67mm filter thread size. Overall, the build quality is pretty good here, and I like the lens's relatively low size and weight, but the autofocus could do with being a little more confident. Anyway, image quality. Let's start by testing it on a full-frame camera, my 42MP Sony a7R III. In-camera corrections are turned on for this test. Straight from f1.4, the lens is razor sharp in the middle of your images with good contrast. If we move over into the corners, contrast remains okay, but we see a touch of softness and, more noticeably, strong chromatic aberration on contrasting edges, despite in-camera corrections being turned on. Stop down to f2 for a touch more brightness and sharpness in those corners, but at f2.8, sharpness becomes excellent in the corners, although that colour fringing is still rather spoiling the show. At f4 we see a touch more contrast, and that's as good as the corner image quality gets. The lens stays this sharp down to f11, where a touch of softness re-emerges due to diffraction, and at f16 the image becomes pretty soft. So, if you can get past the strong colour fringing in the image corners, then this lens actually offers a load of sharpness on a full frame camera. Bear in mind, when doing subject photography at f1.4, those image corners will be out of focus anyway. Alright, let's see how it performs on a 24 megapixel aps-c camera. Now, in the middle of the image at f1.4 we see plenty of sharpness, but there's some ghosting and just a touch of colour fringing on contrasting edges, which is affecting the contrast. Corner image quality is quite weak now. The extra pixel density of the smaller sensor here is clearly taking its toll. Stop down to f2 and those corners look better, if still a little fuzzy. Back in the middle, image quality is almost perfect here, although the eagle-eyed among you will spot just a hint of colour fringing still. Stop down to f2.8 for perfect image quality in the middle, and the corners are looking okay now, apart from that colour fringing again. At f4 we get another improvement, and this is as sharp as the lens gets. Again, stop down to f11 and a little softness emerges due to diffraction, and f16 gets really soft. So it's definitely a worse performance on aps-c here, although the middle of the image is certainly always nice and sharp. Okay, let's go back to full frame, turn off those in-camera corrections, and take a look at distortion and vignetting. The lens projects heavy pincushion distortion here, and at f1.4 the image corners are fairly dark too. Stop down to f2 or f2.8 for those corners to gradually brighten up. Now let's see about close-up image quality. Although the lens can only get you 85 cm close to your subject here, the close-up image quality is very soft at f1.4. You have to stop down to f2.8 to see it sharpen up again. It was during this test that I noticed the lens displaying a lot of focus shift. The focus point goes backwards as you stop down, so I had to move the camera's position a little to compensate. Let's see about work against bright lights now. This is often a serious problem for lower budget lenses, but the Sirui lens puts in an okay performance. Flaring is definitely visible, but it's quite soft. Next, bokeh. This lens's bokeh was a pleasant surprise to me, as it looks lovely and soft in virtually all situations, and that's very important for a portrait lens. Cat's eye shaped bokeh balls are relegated right into the corners of your images as well, leaving you with a very lovely impression. It's probably the lens's greatest strength. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. Even through all that soft close-up image quality, we can see that it's a problem here, with purple colour fringing in the foreground and green in the background. At f2 it's largely gone already though, as it is at f2.8. You can also see the strong focus shifting in this test too. Thankfully, Sony cameras, unlike Canon and some other manufacturers, actually stop your lenses down to autofocus, so you won't get missed shots as a result. Anyway, I can conclude overall that, while it has its flaws, this is still probably one of the best low-budget 85mm lenses on the market today. It's got good build quality, although I wish its autofocus motor were more powerful. Contrast is good, sharpness is very good on a full-frame camera, and you won't really notice its colour fringing and distortion problems out in the field so much. Oh, and its bokeh is pretty gorgeous as well. Obviously, you can get better 85mm lenses than this, but certainly not at this price point and with this bright of an aperture, so for those on a lower budget, it certainly comes recommended. Diolch am wylio pawb, thanks for watching everyone. Hope you enjoyed that video and found it helpful. If you regularly watch these reviews, then check out my Patreon page in the description below for a whole load of exclusive bonus content and a nice warm feeling deep inside for supporting this channel. Ciao for now, everyone.